Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Finance for Monday, December 17th, 2018 to order. As always, first item on the agenda, number 1, public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board in public forum?
No, thank you.
No takers, okay. Item number 2, approve minutes of regular meeting minutes of November 19th, 2018. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion, corrections, comments? I know I had a couple, I gotta find them.
You know, if you hit the bookmark, it'll bring you to where your notes are. Sorry.
No, I didn't, but thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Nice job, Veronica.
I didn't mean to embarrass.
Nothing like embarrassing the chair.
I was
That's
trying
fine.
to be
That's
helpful.
fine, Veronica. That's fine.
We're not even a minute into the meeting.
That didn't take long, did it? Okay. Page 6. Item 6. First line. Mr. Ailes noted that the only correction is instead of should be. March 4th. Should be March 5th. I think it says that would state right. Noted that the only correction is March 4th. Is that March 4th should be March 5th. On page 7, the large paragraph under 8.1, right about the middle of that paragraph where it starts the average salary, I would strike is, and I believe I had stated from all of the information provided by Mr. Goldblatt. And then is, and the numbers. And then on page 8, there's a duplicate motion that should be removed. It's right before the final vote. It was just, I think, a copy. Maybe a copy and paste to do some editing, which I do all the time. It's stated twice. And then I had one more. At the very end of item number 9, under new business, we were talking about the Standing Building Committee liaison, and I did mention I would add the following. Mr. Ailes indicated he would provide the board's recommendation of Standing Building Committee members to rotate in attending future Board of Finance meetings. And I would provide that recommendation to the Building Committee, which I have done. Anybody have any other comments?
I guess I have a question about the performance contracting. Just, it's kind of general though. And this just goes from memory. I want to review some of my notes on the performance contracting, but I believe a part of it was that the engineering firm was going to do the tracking for us to see how well we were doing with the performance contract, whether we were getting the savings.
Was that something in the minutes?
Well, it's in the minutes
because
here.
we could bring it up
issues
next.
On performance contracting.
That's
You're right. It's a little bit of a tangent.
We could bring it up. We're just dealing with the minutes now. Unless it's something in the
If
minutes.
it's not the right time, we'll bring it up later.
We're going to be bringing it up in like 2 minutes. So, is there anything else on the November minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Great. Item number 3, correspondence, Standing Building Committee minutes.
Oh, I thought we were on standing building minutes.
Well, now we are. So,
Yeah, that's why I asked about the performance contracting.
The only thing I was going to indicate was, as I just said, that under Old business, the building committee did talk about the liaison role to our board. I will take a moment to state that the building committee has had some issues in terms of keeping their numbers up. I think they lost a couple of people, but they do need members to be able to fulfill the quorum and actually also get some experience there. But they did say that starting on at the January 22nd meeting, which I recommended, that they would come before us. And I believe it says here that Mr. Ornstein, who's the chairman, will plan to attend that meeting. Is there anything else on the building committee?
I had a question on item number 5. Mr. Merrick advised about some issues with Melissa Jones getting the boilers to work correctly. Do you know what the issues are? Because those are new boilers, so.
If I heard correctly, I think we just heard in our joint meeting with the Board of Education that there was something with the pilots or the they couldn't keep them going. I don't know what the reasoning for that was, but I know that was the issue with the boilers. Linda, do you know if that's?
I believe the issue has all been resolved.
Right.
They had to replace some faulty parts, and I believe they got everything worked out. I can get an update for you tomorrow and send it out from Mr. Garnham.
That'd be helpful, just so
Sure.
you know. Megan?
Would we be getting a turf update later? Should I just hold off on that?
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that under. I had a note under old business.
Okay.
Bring that up. Jonathan, did you want to bring up it?
Well, I
Energy
wanted to ask
performance.
about the tracking on performance contracting. I don't even know the exact part of the agenda to push that question into.
Well, this
Now's good.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is it.
Right.
Yeah, because
As the minutes reflect from the Standing Building Committee, the project isn't complete yet, so the measurements, evaluating the measurements at this point doesn't make sense. We don't have all of the, you can see there are punch list items that aren't done, there are boilers that aren't done, they're still working on some of the lighting issues. Once the project is completed, they will start to generate the reports related to the energy savings.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I thought it was in these minutes, but I think it was in some of the Board of Education, maybe operation minutes, that I read something about they need 2 to 3 years to really start to look at the results, and if they're,
We will start to get
it could be as early as a year, but they're really within the 2-3 year period where we'll have a real good line of how that's going. But it is a really good question. Anything else in building committee? Pension. I know Robert Hartman is here in the audience. Congratulations on selecting a consultant.
Thank you. I think we were all very pleased with the way the process worked. We went from 11 to interviewing 5 after the committee selected 5, and then we really were torn between 2 and asked the 2 to come back. And in the intervening time, one of the personnel we thought were the strongest from one went to the other, and that really clinched it for us. So I'm very, very pleased with the result. So we were able to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, who accepted it.
I know that was done in executive session. Is there anything you could share regarding just your...
We felt that both, so because it was executive session, it's not fair to mention them by name, but
Right.
we felt that they were both best prepared for our needs,
Good.
for a town of this size, for our peer group. They're both at the top of their craft, both highly responsive, both constructive, good relationship manner, and willing to put in the time to work with us. And also something that we've never taken advantage of before is they both offer training and teaching for town employees. So they'll sit and meet with town employees to give them a breakdown. This relieves our HR department of having to do this. And in terms of fees, one was higher than the other. We ended up going with the lower, but that wasn't really the total deciding factor, because if they earn it, they earn it. But we feel it's an upgrade from an advisory point of view in terms of experience, and it's also a decrease in fees. So we're very pleased with it.
Great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Good, good news. Is there anything else on pension? Okay. Moving on, item number 4, review and accept report of expenditures for the Board of Education for November 2018. Amy's here, so we can proceed. We were- Walked right in, right on
That's
time.
right. All right,
Okay.
November. The expenditures for the month of November were $5,151,887.54. That makes our year-to-date through November $20,741,411.36, which is just slightly under where we were last year. The warrant that we're submitting for all the payments, about $2.5 million. And I know we all just had our informal pre-budget talk before this meeting, but for the public, we will receive our budget from Dr. Freeman just after the new year, and we all get a chance to review it and make any changes, questions. You guys receive it, and we go from there. We have public forums the third week in January, 2 nights in a row at Adams
Right.
for the public to comment.
Right, the Monday and Tuesday.
Mhm.
I think it's the last Monday and Tuesday
I
of
think it
January.
is, yeah.
Yeah, so-
23 and something.
28, 29.
Oh,
Thank
very
you.
close.
It's in his calendar.
That's good. At Adams, both nights.
Great. Okay.
Hand those down.
Sure.
Pass those around.
Okay.
I can hand them out before you.
There wasn't really a lot of
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
outstanding things to mention.
I see, the encumbrance is obviously for upkeep of building and grounds is holding, and it's going to hold
It's gonna hold.
for as long as it needs to.
Yes.
And, we've been bringing that up, and then we do know tuition is trending higher.
Correct.
Yes.
We just heard, so it was at 5, I think it was at 583 last month?
Yeah, so we're up.
So we're at 620, about 630, close to 630?
Right. So there were 2 changes, one good news, one not so good news. One was a student who has moved out of the district, so it's no longer our responsibility. And one is another issue with the state denying excess costs on a claim that we submitted. They're still reviewing it. We're hoping that when we do our next submission in March, that they will change their mind and approve it. They did pay for it last year, so we don't know why we're still discussing why it was approved last year and not this year. So right now, that takes out about $76,000 of excess cost reimbursement that we would have received that we're not getting from the state right now.
How long does it take them to review everything?
So we have to submit by December 1st, and we will get our first installment at the end of February. And then we submit again for March 1st, and we will get that payment at the end of May.
Do they have a defined criteria that they review when they consider how
Yes.
much to reimburse? And has that changed? I mean,
So determining how much, so they take all the claims that are submitted and they just have a certain dollar amount allotted, and they take all those claims, and that's how they figure out how much everybody's going to get, what percentage. But there are certain criteria for looking at an individual location, whether it's a private placement or public placement, if it's what services are being provided, what the needs of the student are. There's a number of different things that determine whether or not they will reimburse us. We have one that they are capping because it's a very high cost. So they capped it at a certain dollar amount, and we're not getting anything over that dollar amount reimbursed. And now this one, they're saying that it's
You should probably, maybe be careful just because it might be an
right,
identifiable.
right.
yeah,
That would be-
it's just
I was
this
looking
one's
to
just
see
a
what they
different
have.
a different situation than that one where it's they're not allowing us to be reimbursed for it.
But strange, they would pay for it last year and,
Right.
and then
And do
flag
they
it.
come back and say why, or they just say, no, it's not happening?
No, they gave reasons, and they cited certain statutes and certain legislation, and we're coming back with different
Rebuttal.
ones, and so we're still discussing it.
Okay.
But because they had to meet their deadline, they kind of put us off and said, okay, for right now, you're not take it off your report, you can't claim it, but we'll look at it again and discuss it before the March submission. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we will get that money back.
So this, but the summary says the amount expended is lower than the prior year, but the reason that there's more is, or the percentage is more because of the budgeted amount.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So we, yeah,
So we're
and a lot of it is timing. There's schools
Yeah.
that bill monthly, there's schools that bill
Right.
Quarterly.
So this
Quarterly.
probably won't. Yeah.
There's
This,
some to
say that
this
this
won't
month
last.
only.
This won't
Correct.
last.
right. No,
Yeah. Okay.
no, that
Okay.
will not last.
Okay. I'm gonna use my new little thing here. I guess I have no notes.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Electricity, that seems to be a bright, no
Yes.
pun intended, a bright spot in the thing. Is that a reflection of the performance contracting or the more efficient high school, or is it hard? Can you put your finger
It's
on
kind
it?
of hard to pinpoint. The high school does seem to be trending lower than it had been, or about the same as it was. So we think that the efficiencies at the high school is definitely making a difference. We do have a locked-in rate, which is a very good rate for contract. It started in December. So our utility rate for electricity is a very good rate. So that's helping. We're hoping that this trend's going to continue. You know, if it stays like this, we should be in really good shape for electricity by the end of the year.
Is that locked in on the delivery and the generation? Because I just saw in the paper, the reason I ask is because I just saw something yesterday, I think, indicating that electric rates are going up by 20%
Yeah.
on January 1st. Which,
Both
I think
you
it's-
which I had no, I
and
didn't know.
Eversource.
I was shocked when I saw that.
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
So,
So it's for the generation? I'm trying to think which one it is.
so it's not both though. So we are going to be hit by the 20. Presumably, I would suspect
It's not,
that
I
we're
don't
going
think
to
it's
have
both.
be hit by
I'll-
the
I'll-
increase.
I'll get the exact one and send it out tomorrow.
It's not both.
It's not both.
One-sided,
I think it's for
I
generation.
think it's just for
Yeah,
generation.
because they recommend to shop around.
Right, because all the
Yeah.
other people are competing
Yeah.
on delivery.
But to be careful when you shop around.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, the deals.
so our electric, I guess what I'm saying is, I would suspect that our electric line is going to get ugly
Little
Yeah.
change.
quickly with this rate increase coming at us. I could be wrong. I don't know. First I heard of it was when I.
You're right.
Did you know that? I didn't know this was coming until I just saw it the other
Yeah,
day.
the rate increase was approved last year at the last rate case that
20%.
Yeah.
Didn't. And it's
It's so
both.
they can afford to trim trees.
Right.
Question I have.
And have that 5-mile traffic jam on 95 that day for 2 hours. That was fun.
I did it this morning, so. yeah.
Operations Committee, November 12th. There's 2 items, actually, that were called out. By the way, Mr. Gammerman is not present. He should be back, hopefully, in January, but I did talk to him. We had a lovely conversation and lots of notes I took. And I noticed this as well. There's 2 items in operations that talk about, first of all, a small bus. This is, I'll try to find it here. It's under the review 3.1. Right at the end, it talks about Dr. Freeman stated that he had a conversation with First Selectman Hoey, and since his transportation costs may not fall under the responsibility of Guilford
Yeah.
Public Schools, this is the small bus rather than the van for OLM. That's one, and then there was another one, another issue under, well, it's not under solar. It's under update on facilities projects. The paragraph after solar, Mr. Gurnham reported the town has reached out regarding the fields at A.W. Cox. The primary field is used by the school, but the 2 remote site fields are not. There's been discussion to transfer ownership of the remote fields to the town. Those are just 2 items that seem to be Board of Ed to town. I'm wondering if you could fill us in a little bit more on.
My memory of the fields is that because of the extreme amount of use that our fields get, because the field at Cox is part of the Board of Ed, it cannot be treated in a certain way chemically,
Because it's
because
schools
it's
and
under us,
regulation.
and we have different
Right.
regulations as to what can
Mhm.
be on a school property.
Mhm.
So that was brought to us, because then if the town had it, they could manage it in a different way to perhaps keep it in better condition.
And the field is not used by the elementary school.
It's
They
the
don't-
upper.
They don't use that
Yeah, I
during
know,
their recess.
I
They
know
don't-
exactly which
Yeah.
fields, and
Yeah.
I thought that's probably not a bad idea, based on
Mhm.
the usage of those. I know that those fields have come up before in front of us. I remember regarding irrigation and some other things that were being spent on those fields, so it's just a discussion at this point about,
Yeah, that was the first we'd heard of it and the last I've heard of
Yeah.
it so
Okay.
far. It was definitely something we needed to find more information about. I mean, it's not a school-used field, but it's
Right.
uphill of a school-used field, and so things that we'd have to consider.
okay.
You know, Rick Maynard did come before the operations meeting last week,
Oh, I wasn't there yet.
and talk about it to the board and gave them a little bit more information, and nothing had been decided, so it's still in discussion.
Okay.
So-
And then the OLM transportation, and how would that cost fall to the town and not the Board of Ed?
There's a contention that some other municipalities are billed directly by these private schools. I don't, and that's why Dr. Freeman came to me, and I said, A, I'm unaware of it. B, if we are billed directly by the town, well, we would have the authority to determine who provides the service. There'd be a whole set of parameters that came with it, at which point he said, I think I'll continue to pay for it.
Okay, so it was raised and that was it.
Agreed. But
And-
the point is that this is an unanticipated expense along
Yes.
with the nursing costs that they were not prepared to absorb, particularly given the challenges they're facing with tuition. So his considerations, he may come back to the Board of Finance for an appropriation to cover that.
There-
First time they've done that since I've been active, so it would be an unusual precedent.
The
Well-
school's going back in Madison next year,
Correct.
so it will
It's
fall
just
off
the
of
one
our.
one time.
So I know we were, it was an additional $50,000, and now, and then I saw 70.
Right, 70, because they're not using a van, they're using a small bus, which has a
That's what
higher
that-
cost.
Right, that's what that number was. right.
So we're now being billed for the small bus to
Mhm.
transport the students.
Is there anything else that may be on the horizon, or we think that's pretty well set as far as that amount extra that
I think
we're
that's-
incurring for OLM right now?
Right.
Okay.
Right, we're covering the nursing services within our
Right,
our
that
nursing. We're
was
not going
already
to have to bring
mentioned.
any additional staff in,
Mhm.
as well as the pupil services. Our pupil services department is providing services to the school using our staff, our current staff, and not any additional staff.
Okay.
So there won't be any additional cost there either.
Okay. Anyone else?
I had a question on the warrants.
Sure.
Well, actually, more like a comment, which is why I was asking the questions in the joint meeting prior to our meeting here.
Aerodynamics.
All the repairs, on the HVA systems at almost all the schools with the exception of the high school, it totals a significant amount of money, so that sort of,
And this is just 1 month.
yeah. And I'm well aware that at the time that these incidences happened, we had really hot weather,
Or really cold
then
weather.
really cold
It was
weather.
it was one or the other. I know that, but it was like, wow.
So when we had this discussion at our meeting last week, is whether or not it's better to bring somebody in-house. And Cliff Gurnham explained that, well, for one, we had multiple failures in multiple buildings. If we had one more person, it's still not going to cover all the buildings that we need to cover at the same time. This way with the company, they bring 2 or 3 people in. We could have 2 people on at one school at a time and get the coverage that we need to get things fixed quicker. Finding somebody with the expertise for all these different systems for what our salary range is was very difficult to get the one person that we do have. So we've looked at whether it was worth bringing somebody in-house and hiring a person as opposed to using an outside contractor. And right now we're still saying that the outside contractor is the way to go. We're hoping that things will settle down soon, but we're hoping.
Well, this one contractor seems to know the systems because the one contractor seems to have worked at all the schools. So
yes, and he's local.
Some
It is a Guilford company, so
there.
they're right here. They're very responsive when we need them. So they.
I wasn't questioning the company
No,
or their work. It was just holy
amount
cow.
of them.
The amount is.
Yeah.
It's about what I say when I see the stack of bills come across my
I'm
desk
sure.
every month. Yeah, it's been a lot, and it's multiple failures, multiple systems, multiple times.
Can we expect a similar list next month and the month after, or have the systems been functioning
The
properly?
bills that I've seen for and so that we paid so far in December weren't as many. I'm hoping that it's going to be less.
Has this company made any recommendations as to steps that we can take to avoid these problems in the spring and next?
I haven't heard
Some-
that, but they may have to Cliff Burnham. I can check with Cliff to see if there's been any recommendations.
Isn't any of this covered by the performance contract guarantee? Aren't they supposed to be preventing things like, I'm confused, I'm sorry, because I know they've put in boilers, they've done a lot of work.
I'm not sure about the scope of.
It was a school-wide thing.
Yeah, I think it's dependent on if they touch it or not, or if it needs to be touched. If they bring in a piece of equipment that's supposedly more energy efficient, then they're responsible for that. This seems like it's a lot of existing equipment that either they didn't get to yet in replacement, or it's older systems that they haven't touched yet.
Again, I'm still confused because they put down a whole list of items that they were going to do, and I was under the impression that they had pretty much were close to finishing everything that they were going to do, and that we were starting this quote-unquote measuring period. So I see this, and I think either they missed something or they didn't do something they were supposed to do, and I'm confused as to why the onus is on us to be paying all these bills, because we're supposed to be getting savings, and this doesn't look like savings.
If I can make a comment.
Go
too.
ahead, yeah, go
I
ahead,
think
go
that
ahead.
they were replacing some equipment when the efficiencies were there, but I think we were left with a lot of our existing equipment when they couldn't find enough efficiencies.
I believe that's the case, but to go to both what Ken and Jeff are saying, I think it would be good to find out from Cliff, number one, why there was such a increase that, for this particular warrant. Is it a blip that because of weather changes or weather issues that there had to be emergency repairs, or if that's something that is, possibly going to be a continual issue that we need to address?
Well, that's why I asked, how old
Right.
is this equipment?
And just what are the parameters on
Old.
why it was
Buildings
done,
are old,
and then
equipment's old.
how is that affected by the energy performance contract, if any of this was part of that? I think that would be a very good answer to get first.
It's also odd, I find it odd, that, I can understand an emergency at one school or two schools, but this is multiple emergency line items at every school.
Yeah.
It's not just a one-off
So-
thing.
And what constitutes emergency
well,
repair
I-
is the other thing, because it could be invoice description and they just
So,
say
Classrooms that
emergency
were
repair and
90
it's.
degrees, emergency repair. Classrooms
can-
that were 40 degrees,
I can
emergency repairs.
Explain where that description comes from. So we have a blanket purchase order to Air Dynamics for emergency repairs. So as any invoice comes in for repairs,
goes
it
as
is
just
applied
labeled
to
as.
that purchase order, and it automatically picks up that description.
Yeah, see, and it's misleading.
So it's misleading.
And so it's misleading, and
We
I
still
can-
want to report them.
I
We still
made
want to hear
notes-
from Cliff.
I made notes, and I will have him.
Okay.
We will get back to you
Okay.
with it.
Yeah, it's 33 line items.
Matt.
Yeah, it totals
Oh.
almost 40 grand.
Matt, yeah.
I would offer that we will pull together the project checklist from the energy performance contract, which was part of the documentation you all received at one point.
Trying to find it.
So,
Just using
and
my
there
phone now.
are specific measures that were agreed to, and Jonathan, I think you may be on the mark. The HVAC systems did not present significant opportunities for energy cost savings. Therefore, many of those were not included. All right, and I don't know where the school's capital budget is coming in, but you can probably bet you're going to see some capital projects for HVAC at one or two of them coming through for the bonding, the potential upcoming bonding.
It's hard to retrofit existing 40-year-old HVAC by just controls. You know, when they're pneumatic or whatever, and you got to change the entire system. I think a lot of the projects were lighting, you know, the
Boilers.
solar, you know, complete replacement in older systems. But I think it's a really good point that we should compare those and see that. So
We'll get out
That-
copies of
that'd be great.
measures that were agreed to in the
Okay.
performance contract.
Anything else on warrants?
I have a quick one.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sure I should know this, but I've forgotten. The Erase Branford Public Schools line for $100,000 for adult education. Can you just remind me what that is again?
That's the older, that's the 18 to 21, isn't it?
Well, it's so it's anyone who needs to get a GED. If there's if a student is expelled and they need schooling, they provide it. We contract with Branford instead of doing our own program. They do English as a second language. They do the citizenship test. So they do a lot of different adult education programs. It's not the adult education programs that do the knitting class or the flower arranging. It's not that a part of the adult ed program.
Again, so is this an annual fee
It's an
then?
annual fee.
Based on the number of
So-
people that we're sending to their programs, or how does
It's-
that work?
There's a whole budget for the program, and it's split between 3 or 4 districts. So it's Branford. I know Madison was in. No, Branford, North Branford, Guilford, and Clinton were all part of the same organization. And there's a budget, and then the costs are split between the districts.
And do we know in advance, so we might only be sending 5 people over there for a short period of, so we might be getting good value and we might not be getting good value? Is that
The
basic?
usage varies, and I don't know specifically how much we use it. They have provided that information in the past, and I don't off the top of my head remember it. They're putting together their budget now for next year, but part of that fee is paid by the state. So we get some state reimbursement for that. It's about $11,000 of the state pays, and it passes through us to Branford. But we pay the full bill, and then we get the money back from the state, and the state does it in 2 installments.
And it's state mandated, so
It's-
we're
yes.
either gonna have to do it ourselves or regional.
Right, I guess the part of the question is, what we don't see, but the number is if there are only 2 people going over there, they get GED or they get citizenship qualification or whatever it is they're
Right.
doing, then it would be, I would suspect, a lot easier and
Right.
less expensive to
Yeah.
just do it. If we have 50 people that are going, it all depends on the volume of people and what they're going over there to do, but to just pay somebody $100,000 and we have no idea how many people are using it, and you can probably come back to me and say that each of the past 5 years we spent 75 people and it was well worth the money, but conversely you may come back and say that only 2 people from Guilford have ever walked into the
Right.
doors, and it's something that we should be doing
I
on
can
our own.
I can
don't
ask
know.
them for the usage again.
Thank you, Linda.
I have a just real small one. $605 to Clean Harbors Environmental Services for the A.W. Cox chemical disposal. We know what we're generating over the time.
Leftover lunch.
Yeah, could be. Could be.
I don't remember specifically what that was, but I can let you know when I.
Thanks.
Jokes tonight.
Not the way the food service program seems to be doing pretty well, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna say probably not. Anything else before I entertain a motion? Linda, Amy, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
for the holidays.
You too.
You
Thank
too.
you very much.
See you
Does
in the new
anybody
year.
want to just really quickly explain for the audience the Say Something program that you're launching in January?
Yes, I will
Oh.
give it a very brief,
Thank you.
very brief. So it came out of Sandy Hook, the Sandy Hook Promise. It's an app, and it briefly is staffed by professionals, not in Guilford, where anybody can make anonymous questions to it or comments about unsafe behavior, unhealthy behavior, concerns, broad spectrum of things. Bullying, yeah, from bullying to, weapon concerns, unfortunately, to, someone said they want to harm themselves, anything. And it's received by professionals, and they sort of triage the level of seriousness of the comment that the individual makes and escalate it from there to emergency services or principals, superintendents will have, get notifications if things happen that need their immediate attention. I'm trying to remember all the other, a few towns have done it.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't have my papers, and we discussed it at our last workshop meeting, but it will go live in January, and I think we really feel like it's going to be a good thing. We've heard good things. And it's just not...
And the cost of this to the district?
Nothing.
Just want to make sure they got mentioned.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
No
the best
cost.
part of it. And I think it's nice that it's staffed with, professional folks that know how to handle and literally triage the importance of the questions. And
And it launches next month.
yes, middle of the month, I think.
And what's included with the launch? Like sessions or meetings?
There's been
training for
administrators,
parents,
parents,
staff.
staff.
Yeah.
So parents should keep an eye out for this.
Correct.
No, it's a very good resource, so I'm excited that we're
I think
doing
Brantford
it.
has joined.
Yeah, there's definitely some people who've done it already and some that have
Yeah, as
gotten
a
on
result
board
of us
as
starting
we've
it.
started to go through the process.
Yeah.
Great job. I think it's great, so I just wanted
Good luck
to
with
get
it.
it on
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
that was
record.
good.
Look forward to updates on that. Yeah, be good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Therefore, do I hear a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for the month of November 2018 in the amount of $5,151,887.54?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Great.
Hello.
Boom. Mary Jane, you're here. So, item number 5. You're here before I even got to get to the item. No, stay there. No, you just stay right there. Review and approve report of expenditures for town government for November 2018. Mary Jane.
First of all, I want to talk a little bit about electricity. I had to look up my notes because, trust me, I am not an expert, but I have been making some calls regarding what we have. As far as our generation, there should be no change, according to the people that manage, that watch our account. The delivery is the part that the increase is coming on, and it's based on kilowatt hours, but our bills are based on demand. So I have a call in to Eversource because they're really the only ones that can provide us what I was told guesstimates of what our increase is. Currently, we've put in a modest increase in our electricity rate, not to go overboard, but as we get more information, we'll work on that. But it's the delivery. The generation is changing for us, and the delivery is the part that we're questioning. But that's about as technical as I can get with electricity. So, but in other words, I'm working on getting some of those answers prior to our budget.
Okay. Thank you. Revenues, start?
Sure.
If you'd like.
So I can note that tax collection is completely updated for the year and now showing 55.2% collected, which just by chance happens to be exactly where we were last year. Couldn't have put that together if I tried on my own, but so that's all up and running up to speed now. The I was going to say the tax collector is still seeing delinquencies in motor vehicle this year more than ever, but otherwise other collection is coming in. Yes, Jonathan.
Is that extra 5% personal property? Is that why we've collected more than 50% of our tax revenue? I was just curious. I don't always understand the numbers.
It all measures. It all works its way in. Yes.
Okay, I probably broke your rhythm.
Yeah. It does help with the it would help with the bottom line. The next thing I want to talk about is the fire department. You'll notice the fire department revenue is in at 42%, right where we should be. I'm attributing that to the decision to hire the new executive assistant at a 40-hour work week instead of 35, and allowing her to do additional work on billing and bringing that money in faster than we've had it before. So that hopefully that's a trend that will continue. She's been with us a little while now, so hopefully that will continue. But at the moment, we're right where we should be at this point.
And that's for, since there's a month lag, that's for just 4 months. So
well, there's less of a lag because we're getting our billing in a little bit quicker.
Oh, the month lag was only due to billing? I thought it was the way we kept the books that we wouldn't ever get it back.
A little bit of both.
Oh, so I can't multiply that times 3 to get to a $300,000
not necessarily, no.
surplus.
No, we're getting it's just been getting done more expediently.
Okay.
So we still got a small lag, but it's minimized.
Well, we're virtually at the same point through the year.
Correct.
That.
That's my point.
Which is, and it's always been about 10% behind.
Correct.
Approximately.
Right.
Okay.
I won't say we won't bring in more than but at this point, that's not the anticipation. Park and Rec is the next item. It's a little lower at this point. One of the items, if you look in the detail, their room rental fees are way down this November as compared to last year. And the only thing I can attribute is that we've been spending a lot of time in these rooms over the last month because of the elevator being down, and that may have attributed to less rental coming in because we've been monopolizing this building because of the town hall elevator. So overall, we're slightly higher than where we were last year, and things are looking good. Even on the state side, the money is coming in as expected, on time. So far, hopefully that trend will continue as well.
We'll move over to expenses.
Not a lot to say on expenses. We're tracking slightly higher than we were last year, mainly due to timing of some of our things that I've noted over the past few months that we're billing annually instead of quarterly or now, so that's really the difference. The one item at the very top of the selectmen's expenses are slightly higher. The cost of the land use assessment was approved to be spent out of their consulting line with the intent that we would transfer that from the technology committed fund balance. So that's roughly $37,000 that will eventually be covered. At this point, we just paid the last invoice at the end of November, so I don't have that for you today. But unless you have any other questions on expenses, I didn't have anything more to add than we have in the past.
Mr. Gammerman had mentioned just on fire, it seemed to be trending a little bit higher, and why that might be. I think the comparison was probably more towards last year where it was. So I'm just asking that question for him. I looked at the detail. It seems to be maybe in, do my notes here, see if it, there we go. How about that? Thank you, Veronica. Seems to be more in the encumbrances under operating supplies and vehicle maintenance. Seems to be a little bit more. So it looks like that might be why it's trending higher on the encumbrances. but-
Yeah, and
Other than that, I didn't see
most,
anything.
Most likely, yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
a huge spread, so I didn't call them or to ask them anything.
Okay. Yes, Matt.
While you're on fire, I'd like to bring you to take a look at replacement salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Last year at this time, we were significantly overexpended in replacement salaries. You may recall that the addition of the 8 new firefighters, while a significant net increase absent the grant money, was intended to reduce replacement salaries because we now have 10 on. We don't have to replace 2 every time someone gets called out. So this was one of the potential areas for savings on the replacement salaries, and it's starting to manifest itself.
It's 48% now. Do you remember?
I don't.
You
I
recall
don't
what the
have the number
comparison
from
was last year?
But
It was high- it was a lot higher.
We were several $100,000 over in replacement salaries last year.
I did speak to Deputy Chief Shove today, and he assured me that he will have a report on the SAFER grant and the effect on the budget as he comes forward with his budget presentation. So we will hear more of that next month.
Has there been much feedback from the folks up in North Guilford as to having the extra firefighters up there?
Yeah, I'll provide some anecdotal evidence. A friend of mine suffered a massive heart attack, were it not for the fact that there was a 5 or 6 minute response time, and the fact that his wife was there to make sure that she kept him alive for the 4 or 5 minutes it took them to get there. He'd be dead. So there's no question, and it's predominantly the EMS services. This is what most people forget. This is not about fire predominantly. This is about access to EMS services. So I've received several compliments on the fact that they're now within the 5 to 8 minute range as opposed to the 10 to 15 minute range that it used to be.
I'll just add that the state, I think the state maximum is a 10-minute response time. You're supposed to respond within 10 minutes for the state regulations. So that's great.
That was one of the statistics that this particular grant was supposed to improve
Yeah.
on.
Okay. Anything else on expenditures? We'll just go in order here. Special fund, weekly warrants. Again, I'm bringing a question forward for Mr. Gamerman. I thought I knew the answer, and I think I just want to get confirmation. There's right at the top. There's 2 for Fuss and O'Neill for 2 Baldwin projects, but the descriptions are different. The total of 2 of them, or the 2 of them, is in fact there might have been a third one too that I saw, but it was smaller. But it was about $25,000, maybe closer to 26. One is prior year encumbrances, environmental consulting at Baldwin, and then the other one is the Baldwin building improvement, which is the 3.5 million, which I believe that's the windows. That are, those are 2 separate projects.
Correct.
But the same vendor.
The first one is left over from a purchase order from, it's the technology upgrades for all of the schools. I don't know what the exact number for the bond was, but that's what the first Fuss and O'Neill
For
the prior year.
For technology?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the computer equipment. I'm looking at the first bond, the technology.
Yeah, I was going to say Fuss and
sorry,
O'Neill's
yeah.
environmental.
I'm
And
looking-
I know there was some remediation, soil
notes- my
remediation
notes
that
are
had to be
little
done. So I was thinking that that's what that was, environmental consulting for Baldwin based on the environmental. I remember it not being anything major. It was based on regulation that they had to, I think, do some soil remediation before they did the window projects.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But then this was a different project, a different line item. But one was prior year encumbrances, and the other one was appearing to be, the bonding from recently, from the 3.5 million in Baltimore.
Right, the prior year encumbrance doesn't necessarily mean an old bond, well, it would be an older bond, but it just means that there was a purchase order
Right,
from last
that
year that
just got
didn't get
brought over.
completed until now.
Right.
Yes.
And then I had one other question on this. Castle Booze, probably about 10 or 12 down, and it's the consulting services for the synthetic turf. The funding source is the GHS new construction, which makes sense, but I guess what I started wondering was the GHS new construction, how much more do we're tapping out of that for that project? How much more do we?
We were over $1 million under budget on that.
And this is
project.
not a big amount,
This
but
is no.
so we're just
Right.
basically
We're utilizing that based
we're
on-
realizing it out of that bond.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay.
We don't, it's not reimbursable by the state, but we are just utilizing those funds.
Okay.
If you remember, we are hoping to be, if we still are reimbursed by, no, we're not.
The point is, it's not coming out of an operating budget. It's coming out of the bond, which we already have the approval for.
We have the
Obviously,
approval for the
it just
bond
means we have to
funding.
bond a little bit more for this particular issue.
And we've run that by bond counsel, Shipman and Goodwin. And,
Yeah, well, it has to do with the high school.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. I hadn't realized it until I read it, and I was like, oh, that's where that money's coming from.
And
Which is good. It's not out.
it's a relatively small number
Right.
overall, so it's.
It was an
it's not
overall. What was it? It was
much.
overall 35, 40.
40,000, but we had to increase that by another 10,000, and I will provide you. With
You'll
some
provide the
further
update.
updates.
That's fine.
But there is
That there may be more.
plenty in that
Okay.
that bond authorization to cover that.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else on special fund?
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but there's a couple items for the DEP consent. We're going to take that up later?
Pick it up now. That is the consent order that
Yeah.
I think we've all talked about.
Yeah.
We had our first face-to-face negotiation session a couple of weeks ago with DEP on the consent order. It couldn't have gone much better for us. The original size and scope and suggested remediation projects were significant, based on the fact that we had Malone McBroom's analysis of the violations that turned out to be far less significant than DEP had originally cited. The size and scope of the remediation project has dropped dramatically. So the expenses you see are for Pullman and Conley, which is for Chris McCormack, who is our environmental attorney, and there's more to come on that. We're not done with expenses on it either.
A positive first step.
It's a very positive first step. I'll be happy to fill you in on some specifics under an executive session if needed, because it's a current negotiation.
Anything else under special? Anything else under special fund? Go to weekly. The very first item on the weekly warrants for the bus. $4,400. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I thought that was a dollar sign. $54,000. So that is for a bus for seniors, and it's under capital. Is that the same bus that we heard about during the? Not. Is that the replacement that is being identified possibly for 2020 by Parks and Rec?
No, it's the bus. It's the bus that we currently have on Public Works property, waiting to be lettered, sent out for lettering, etc. This was the bus that I think our piece of it is $16,000.
Yeah,
We have to pay for it, and then we're receiving a
little bit lower.
grant.
There's another payment for 18.
Yes, yeah,
The
I have it.
14,848 is the town's portion,
Okay.
and the 54 or whatever the top number is the state grant. We had to pay the entire amount
To be able to get
reimbursed for that 54.
So this is for an amount. This is for
This is a
a piece
bus
of.
we've
This is
already
technically a piece of equipment or a bus that's already been approved. That's been.
Not a piece of equipment for a bus.
It looks like a
That'd
bus
be
and
an
it
expensive
smells
piece
like-
of equipment.
Because I
And
know
the one
that,
you see in the capital plan
Yes.
is exactly like this. It's another one with another grant.
got it, okay.
Two separate buses.
Thank you, that's
The
my
one
question.
like the bus we have now, and the other like
I was
the bus
wondering
that
why
we're
it
gonna
would have been in the
get.
capital plan again if we just got one, but nope, I got it. All right, and that'll come up more, I'm sure, during our.
Right, so it's two
budget
separate
season.
payments, because two separate line
Understood.
items, because
Thank
our
you.
cost, state costs. We will be receiving that back from the state.
Okay. Anything else under weekly warrants? Any warrants? No.
I had one under warrants.
Go ahead.
I don't know there. I think it was 4 or 5 pages down. It was a tax refund. It had Liberty Bank. I'm not aware of a Liberty Bank in Guilford, and it was the address that it was sent to was Long Hill Road, but it was Long Hill Road in Durham, and it was for $5,000 or something. Does that ring a bell?
Well, Liberty Bank.
I can find.
think
Let me see if I
it's-
can find
I
it.
think Liberty Bank's headquartered out of Middletown. isn't
Yeah,
it?
the headquarters is in Middletown. Typically, a reimbursement to the.
Here it is. 15. No, that's grinding service. That was another one I was going to ask about. I'll see if I can keep going. I'm sorry.
You know, typically we reimburse the.
Top of page 3? Top of page 3.
A bank for,
Yeah, that's it.
you know, housing, for,
I know it's not a small
property, yeah. I know.
Could be anything, could be escrow, could be foreclosure.
Yeah, it's only,
Oh, anyway.
Did you
maybe
find it?
can-
Is it
Yeah, it's the
$500?
top of page 3. They're
Oh,
right.
top of page
It's
3, sorry.
$3,800 tax refund.
I think that's Middletown, right?
Yeah, it's
oh, long,
Middletown.
okay. Okay, Middletown, yeah. That would be. The property
That's
tax
probably their.
refund.
Is that their head, is
I
that
think
their
that's the
bank headquarters
I
then?
don't know if it's their headquarters, but I do know they are headquartered in Middletown.
Yeah, I think I thought their headquarters was right on,
It's right
On Main Street.
on
downtown.
Main Street,
Yeah.
downtown. But
Could be a
that could be
could be
the
a process.
the office that processed that particular payment. So
Mhm.
3815 is most likely, you know, just the regular escrow payment.
So that's it's a residential.
Correct,
It's
it would
a
go back.
residential property here.
Right, so it would go back to the, whoever
Okay.
sent it to us. So if the bank sends us your escrow, it goes back to the bank.
Okay.
Okay.
$500 didn't make sense, but $3,800 makes sense. It was the amount that was bothering me more than anything else.
Anything else? Points?
Durham Middlefield Interlocal, the grinding services, that's
Yes.
for road grinding. That's not the tub grinder up at the stump dump, right?
It is the
Tub grinder.
the tub
Oh, that is the
grinder
tub
at
grinder,
at
the
stump dump,
15,000,
correct.
okay.
We contract with.
Yeah, that thing's
Durham Middlefield.
expensive.
Okay.
Just a point of
I thought it was
reference.
more expensive than that. But
No, that was it, but
It's really-
just in the spirit of cooperation, because of the significant damage we had with the storms, we were unable to complete the work in the time allotted, and owing largely to Mary Jane's previous relationship with Durham as their finance director, we were able to extend the use of that by a couple of weeks. So Mary Jane negotiated a very favorable deal for us.
It was really Tom, but.
Yeah, he said, Mary Jane told me to ask you.
I wasn't gonna say that. You know?
well, thank you.
Okay. If nothing else, we'll move on to medical. A little bit more of a hit than,
Not a good one.
Well,
seeing that we had 2 fairly, reasonable months, right? This one caught up with us a little bit more.
correct.
So-
And we can talk about that, but what I really want to talk about is a change you might not see just from looking at this. We've moved claim expenditures into the admin column, so that your admin expenses have increased and the claims have decreased. As of July 1, Anthem changed their website and their reporting to us. The way we were receiving it in prior years, some of the fees Anthem was classifying as claims because of the type of fees they were. And I can't get technical about it too much, although our broker has said he'd come and talk to you guys if you needed to. With their new system, they're able to break this down in greater detail. So we were able to pull specifically claims and move every item that even smacked that looked like a fee into the admin line. And the reason we're just doing it now in November is twofold. First of all, last week we just received our training on the new system. And our broker, who is working on putting together our numbers for next year, noticed that his claim numbers that he was pulling off were lower than the ones I was reporting. And when we started to look into the difference, that's what we were finding, that there was discount rates and fees that some of the other providers were charging as part of their claim, but we're now able to pull that out really as a fee, even though in prior years we weren't able to do that, at least not on our end. So,
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Does that mean we were getting ISL catastrophic coverage before on the claims line that we're not now getting, or were they?
No, it
or
did
were
not
our
affect
numbers
ISL. Did not the ISL they pulled out were just the claims. It was affecting because we were able to pull all the specific claims for ISL, so we were able to see that detail. We were not
So there's no
getting
change to our
no
coverage.
The ISL is not changing. The only thing that was changing. So bottom line, the expenses are the same. It's just how we're now categorizing them, and we're able to
It's a truer picture.
see a truer picture.
So is
Yes.
it fair to just say we were understating the admin column
Correct.
previously?
Yes.
Okay. You have to simplify things for me, right? You gotta boil it down.
I know.
When did we made a transfer? Maybe it says fund balance as of June 30th of 18 in current reserve is 3.8 million. We transferred a chunk of money out of here at some point. Was that
The end of-
subsequent to that?
we did that. I mean,
For the Board of Ed or something?
we
moved a
did
bunch
that
money
as of
out?
June 30.
Yeah.
So we
So this number, I don't remember that number being significantly higher. How much did we take out of there? Do you remember?
we didn't
take
take
anything
anything
out.
We
out.
turned it over
We
to
didn't
put
put it
it
in.
into,
Yeah.
they just didn't kick
It
it
was
in.
never
about
put it in.
900,000. I think it was
Right.
about $900,000 that they did not contribute to the fund. Instead, they paid it to the pension.
To the pension.
Correct.
So,
And that's net of that number.
It was
Yeah,
never
so
went
it-
in.
so if that had gone in, that number would be $900,000 higher. For some reason, I thought the number had gone down. I guess I'm wrong on that, okay. But I
So-
knew that,
Yeah, so to go to your point, at the last meeting we talked, in fact, Matt, you had mentioned, would we like to see the OPEB transfer amount here? Because I guess showing where that transferred, there was a transfer into a special account that we approved a couple months ago. I was looking at this and I didn't see it. I don't know if that message got back to you regarding
The
medical?
OPEB, no. That
But I know that it
here.
came up in our meeting notes, and then I looked at this and I said, oh, wait a minute, I don't think it's reflected here, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. That would be helpful in the future.
We had taken
It was 200,000.
200,000.
200,000. It would just be good to see that, because that was the seed
I
money
agree.
to grow. And you actually, you had recommended it. And,
We haven't actually moved the money yet, right?
Okay. So when it is, then it'll be reflected here.
Correct.
Okay. Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Put your coat back on.
Not allowed.
Okay, anything else for Mary Jane? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town for the month of November 2018 in the amount of $2,222,515.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions or recusals? Okay. Thank you. You're going to stay there, right?
I have two more items, so yeah. I'm
Yeah.
fine.
So item number 6.
I'm glad that I'll gladly go back in the audience.
That's fine.
Easy
Item
enough
number
for you to do
6.
without me, probably.
Well, I was wondering whether we'd have to read these out loud, but I'm sure you'll take care of it. Consider and take possible action on transfer from reserve for personnel to the fire department salary accounts as a result of settled labor contract. And the memo is here. Shall I read it, or you just want to summarize it?
Well,
Why don't you summarize it?
Sure.
Sure.
So at the very end of last year, last fiscal year, I should say, we settled the firefighters' contract, And there's a relatively small increase to go into the 18-19 budget to cover the changes that were made. So for full-time salaries, $110,000, and in the overtime line, $3,340, requesting to come out of reserve for personnel.
What does that leave? I meant to look at this, and I
I should have looked at it. The selectman asked me this morning, and I
What that
doing
leaves in
audit all
reserve for
day
personnel.
today. I'll have an answer for you.
Yeah, I could probably all look at it, but I forgot to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll look it up while I'm sitting back there. It's on the
Right,
other
let
page.
Let us know. All right. So, what I'll do, I'll just entertain the motion here, because I got all kinds of arrows here to read it correctly. So, motion to approve. Do I hear a motion to approve a total transfer of $113,340 from 00146-51400 reserve for personnel into, we should probably give the line items, 00131-51000 full-time salaries of $110,000 and 00131-51200 overtime of $3,340.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. On to number 7. Discuss and take possible action on recommendation from the Board of Selectmen to use the $150,000 previously set aside by the Board of Finance in fund balance committed to technology to contract with Connecticut Computer Services for a series of technology upgrades, with the memo attached.
So at this morning's Board of Selectmen meeting, the contract for some significant work to be done on our IT was approved. I think we might have discussed it before, that we were looking at a very comprehensive upgrade to our systems. What I reported this morning was there are a few items for the people that came to the capital budget meetings. You'll remember me hearing this. We had some significant budget requests in our 5-year capital plan to do some additional work at Town Hall on our IT systems, which thanks to the transfer that we put into the reserve, we were able to get a contract for all of that work done by one company, saving us money over time to get it done. Matt can talk more technical about what's more than I can about what we are doing, but updating our servers,
That's all I wanted to know.
all of our servers, bringing them up to date on licensing, all of that, which we were trying to do over time. And this contract will allow us to get all of that done. Should be done before the end of this fiscal year. So some of the money we already had budgeted for this year in capital, and some we had planned over the next couple of years. So the contract is a little over $160,000. We're asking to authorize us to use, up to $150,000 from that technology line. We would use the money we have currently budgeted first, and then just tap into that as needed. So that's what we're looking for today.
This wasn't the money from the rainy day fund that we had transferred, was it?
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
it
Yes.
That's exactly it.
Just to follow up on Mary Jane's, part of what we're doing here is taking ourselves from 2003 technology to 2016. We're not going to 218. Microsoft's most recent version, which just came out. We'll wait till they work the bugs out on that. Active Directory, Jonathan, was 2003. We no longer have support for our Exchange server. We're at 2007 version, so we have to upgrade to 2013, then to 2016. Also, there's a level of high availability that we're creating, a redundancy in our server and switching fabric, so that if we lose a component, the network doesn't go down. Just as a way of a little bit of a breakdown, of the 165,000, 50,000 of that is in professional services. This is competitively priced, particularly off a state contract. There's over 300 hours here at $165 an hour, which is a very competitive rate in the industry. Connecticut Computer is, as indicated, is on the state bid contract, and we checked some references at the state as well as some other folks. So we're comfortable that this will bring us to a place where we should have been some time ago. And this is the kind of investment. This kind of investment has, and the size of it has been made necessary because we have somewhat neglected the IT infrastructure over time. So, and as Mary Jane said, we also anticipate that there are some capital projects in the current 2019 operating budget that we will not have to expend, which we will. Our intention is, by not expending those, we will return that money to the Special Technology Fund.
Is the professional services just installation or installation and training as well?
Both. And Tony will be working alongside the Connecticut Computer Company as well.
And then
Right.
it'll be on Tony to spread the information amongst the rest of the staff so that we're all using.
He is the staff.
Okay. Well, I just meant in the various departments so that they're all taking.
Well, this is not user interface stuff. This is
Okay.
all infrastructure.
All behind the scenes.
Yeah, this is infrastructure.
It's so our users will be able to continue working.
So, my question really goes to the future. So, we're taking care of this now. What does this look like in the future? Now we took it off the capital. Is there, spending $150,000, $150 now, and all the technology upgrades that we need to have? 2, 3, 4, 5 years is, and I'm sure there is. I'm just wondering what the plan is to maintain it so that we don't have a huge $150,000 later. Is it just, again, budgeting correctly in our capital plan and making sure it's not 150, but it's more like making sure there's 30,000? I mean, I'm kind of setting a very simple hypothetical here.
In a perfect world, you would like to have staggered some of this stuff so that you're not getting hit with it all at once.
Right.
The average lifespan of some of these, we're utilizing servers and software that's from 2003.
Right. And it's the typical lifespan is 3 to 5.
So the anticipation is, we don't necessarily need to be on the bleeding or leading edge of things. We need to be
Operable.
in systems that are still under support from the vendors.
Yeah.
And as I said, we have a couple of systems that have been out of support for several years. So the point is to identify those, and as we had this conversation with Tony this morning, he's going to create somewhat what's referenced in the industry as an ITIL, which is a library of all your assets, and when those assets are intended to be retired and or replaced.
So you will see items on the capital plan moving forward. Our hope is that we do it in a systematic process that will keep us where we need to be without coming forward with such a large request.
I'm just familiar with this right now because my firm has just kind of gone through, we just got the report of what we need to do with our systems. And we have to stay a little bit more cutting edge probably than a municipality does. But with this kind of expenditure, I would think for the next year, maybe 2, maybe even to a third year, you're not going to see a lot of expenditures. But then on year 4, you're going to see a little bit, and then it's going to be paced.
We've already taken,
and that's up to Tony to figure out.
Correct. We've already taken out over the next 2 years in the 5-year capital plan over $85,000 worth of requests.
Okay.
So half, approximately, of what we're doing now, we had seen over the next few years anyway. So that we've removed from the 5-year plan.
So, again, when this came up before, I couldn't support it. I don't think this is appropriate spending for rainy day funds, and I think it unnecessarily circumvents the budget process and the referendum process for voters, and it's spending that's just done at will, just kind of robbing a fund that's not appropriate for this purpose. The worthiness of the project isn't really a question to me. Obviously, we want to keep up our technology, but it should flow through our normal budget process. So I don't even want to support the transfer from one account to another.
Well, you had made that
So
clear
the money,
last
so
time.
you and I both voted against this for those reasons, but the money has already been transferred, so I'm just going to personally abstain from the voting, because I agree with you. I don't think it makes any sense to vote against it, though, because you can't, we've already voted as a group, and we were outvoted, so I think, I don't know, I was going to ask you, Mr. Chairman, if you thought it would be better for me to abstain or to vote against. I think abstaining is probably more consistent with...
I don't think it's necessarily fair for me to tell you how to vote.
No, because I'm not...
Especially on tape.
I'm not throwing it down.
That's not going to happen.
Whatever.
I will say that, and of course, I've largely, I've been very much in favor of this, because I think it's either you're either going to use operational dollars to do it that's already sitting there, that we do know we have some, whether you don't agree with the use or not, that's up to you.
So let's
But
use
it's either that or we're going to bond. Either that or we're going to
For me,
need
it
to
had
bond
nothing to do
it.
with use, it had to do with the budget process, and I thought it should have been a budget item where we are right now, that's all. So we don't have to go
It's a
through all that
process
again,
issue,
right?
not a, yeah, I get it. Is there anything else on the transfer? Otherwise, I'll just entertain a motion, which would be to transfer $150,000 to 00147-57507 Capital Information Systems Technology from fund balance committed to technology.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Abstain.
Oppose.
Opposed, abstain. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to...
Just like to add one more
Sure, go
thing.
ahead.
Reserve for Personnel has a budget of
Yep.
$243,000. We just transferred 113, leaving a balance of 130.
Okay.
Is there any unsettled?
There are no unsettled
That's-
contracts
Okay,
this year.
so we have a little extra then.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask the same question.
Thank you.
Thought that was the last one, so...
On the building permits, just a quick
Yeah, go
comment.
ahead. Sure.
I noticed the building department revenue is significantly higher this year than it was last year. We're already at 75% of budget, but the number of, and maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly, but we had 21 building permits last year. We only have 5, which are on pace to do 12 so far this year. So does that just mean that those 5 buildings, we had generated a lot of revenue from those
They're big
5 buildings,
projects.
basically? Or-
Right, these are the new housing permits, the 5 that you're talking about. We have the couple of major projects that are underway that are not reflected here. 66 High Street and
Yeah, these
what's
are-
the project
did they
Bill
get
is
the
working
whole-
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, oops.
So
if
it's
you-
not
if
fair
you-
to compare this 5 with that,
No.
with that
No,
240,000
so if
you're-
in the budget for the
if-
building permits.
You're right.
If you look at the detail that follows the initial report,
I did, there's only one line.
Yeah.
At least on mine, there was only one line.
the Munis report,
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Maybe it
but
went
there's
out, maybe
all
I
different
missed a
types.
page.
Aren't there
I know
all
what you
different?
mean, but I thought I only saw one line. Hold on.
I mean,
These buil-
there are numerous types of building permits.
Yeah.
Right.
That
Yeah.
The five-
report
I saw the
only
one line.
reflects new homes.
These
Okay.
these 5 are single-family residential
homes.
new.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could have only 5 here. And by the way, that I did get this question from Mr.
I don't have
Gamerman
that,
as
by the
well.
way, I don't have that breakdown of my munis.
You
I
don't
don't
have
have
the-
that. I just
you
have
don't
the
have the
one
backup?
line with 45,000, with the $320,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking in the report. The actual building report, under your reports,
Under.
not the
Oh,
revenue
under,
line.
yeah, under building permits.
Under number 8.
Committee reports.
You're
On the
looking at-
agenda, it's number 8, building
And
permits.
then just keep
No,
scrolling
that's
down
what
up to
I'm
the
looking at.
5.
Okay, I got it, I see it.
So,
Okay,
so,
thank you.
so the idea is that you could, a lot of these, the numbers are probably higher largely because of commercial, big projects,
Right,
or
that's
just,
what I was
or
assuming.
just
Yeah.
quantity.
Yeah.
You could have a ton of electrical permitting and smaller permits that just the quantity is much larger to bring that number up. It's definitely not based on the single family.
But while we're talking about that,
We are making some changes.
that report that you're seeing that 5 on,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just questioning the value of that report that I have to put together I can see a few years ago as buildings was, going up and down, but that 5 doesn't really give you an idea, it's not, I don't see how that has value overall. The whole report with all of the building permits is more valid. I didn't know if
The summary is what you're saying, hasn't
Yeah.
it? I
mean,
would agree.
Every
I don't
6
know.
months, I kind of like looking at the, I mean, it's interesting if you look back
Yeah.
in the 90s, the 80s, and the 90s,
Quarterly
the
would be
trends, but
fine
it's,
for me.
Yeah,
but
it's certainly the
if you miss it
easiest
for a few
report I
months, it's
do.
not
Trust
gonna-
me, I plug in
Yeah.
a number, it's the easiest one. I just, it's just one more report. I didn't know if
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't providing the value you had originally.
I like the
Right.
detail from Munis, but the summary, if I saw that quarterly, I'd be fine.
See,
It's easy enough for us to do. And
That's 'cause you're an
Yeah,
architect.
right, a month.
no,
Yeah.
no, I wasn't going to go there. Actually, as much as I could enjoy reading this, of course, there's a lot of other things we're looking at too. I'm wondering. I agree that the single family doesn't. It's more of a kind of a talking point now. It's like, oh, look, it's 5 or 6, whatever. I'm wondering is on the detail, could we have that a little bit more condensed? Instead of, for example,
shouldn't have asked
I'm
the
looking
question.
at
I retract the comment.
interior remodel residential, and then there's I don't know, 10 or 12 sub items underneath that, with most of them having almost none or one that are a couple, of $50 or whatever. I'm just wondering if there's a way of just having the Munis report put out just the main categories and not instead of that front page and having the single family. We could always look at it in the in a condensed report, and then if we really want to get into detail, it's just printing out the report, right? It's just generating the report. So I might want to see what the barn residential is, but do I care whether it's a barn, electrical, educational fee?
Next month, and we'll see what you think. How's that?
Well,
It just gets there's a lot. It gets a little cumbersome to read all this, but
well, I will tell you this: we're not going to redesign Munis to accommodate because
if you can do it, great. If you can't,
apropos of a report that Veronica's going to give about building permits, each one of these is an entry for a reason, because it carries a rate with it.
so Veronica, would you like to give us a report?
I don't have a report at this time, but
But I'm wondering if we can.
We can-
So a lot of the reports in Munis, we can.
I like this.
You could condense
Uh,
it.
Maybe I'm the only
but,
one.
No, but I mean, the top, I know, but can maybe all the lines that are zeros, maybe, even if we were able to,
I
do
definitely
that.
don't want to redesign the report. All I'm saying is,
Well,
is there a way of just when you generate the report, you have the one
The
you have
main
now, and then you,
categories
and then you
instead
just
of
have one that's
subcategories.
like an executive summary of the categories, and then might be another page or two
Just drop it in, Crystal.
longer. But if you can't do it, then we just keep the detail, and you can
If I
save
can-
yourself the time of doing the first one.
If the building department can change it easily enough, you'll see a different report
That'd be great.
next month.
Otherwise,
So just-
are we all in agreement starting next year that we could take?
I just have one last question.
Go ahead, Ken.
So if the revenue is roughly 240 year to date, and there's 140 on this 140, can I take the difference of those two, the 100, and say that that's all commercial?
Oh, from residential versus commercial.
Yeah.
I'm
So the
not.
total building line's around 240, and all of this stuff here, the bottom line, it says it's 140,000 roughly.
For residential.
So that leaves 100,000 to get to there. Is that basically commercial then?
Well, there's
It's hard for me to say. I'm
No.
not as
No, 'cause
familiar
there's-
with how
this
the
is
building.
it's commercial.
Yeah.
There's
commercial in here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, commercial
Forget it.
fit out, commercial
So you want to see
events.
a subtotal for residential and then commercial?
It doesn't matter. No, I don't even want to see anything. I'm good. I'm good.
We haven't even gotten into charts and graphs.
You want a pie chart or a bar graph? Jen?
I'm sorry.
It's all, hey, every once in a while you gotta talk this stuff out. It's fine. It's all right. All right. Anything else under committee reports? No, there's not. Old business. I did want to mention that the Board of Selectmen Capital Plan Workshop was on November 29th. Matt, I don't know if there's anything you want to report back on that, or I sat through most of it. I had to leave a little bit earlier. In fact, I don't think I got to technology. Oh no, actually I did make it through the entire. There was another item you had on your agenda, but it wasn't part of the capital plan workshop. So it was very informative, by the way, as it always is every year, seeing what the 5-year plan is out there. And hopefully if you have any questions, any of you, or any of us, when we go to the, I know there are budget workshops, but I'm sure there'll be some capital discussion there on some of the items.
Mary Jane and I have a meeting tomorrow to start to assess and put together some prioritization scheme for the capital projects.
Okay. The other item I had on here was turf field.
Turf field.
And an update on that. I believe the mediation was still held, right? Was it Wednesday the 12th?
It was last Wednesday the 12th, and I'm not trying to avoid answering specific questions, but there is a level of confidentiality that will need to be adhered to. We had a successful mediation. It started at 9 o'clock in the morning with the 6 parties: ourselves and the engineering firm, the general contractor, the turf field manufacturer, the pad manufacturer, and the infill manufacturer. At 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, we walked out of there with a deal. I don't know, Jeff, you've probably been in mediation sessions as an attorney, but with 6 parties, it was a very interesting day. Literally, the mediator set us, all of us together in a very, very big conference room. All the 6 parties had, business decision makers as well as attorneys, and there was even some insurance adjusters. After giving the charge for the day, the mediator split us into conference rooms, and he literally went back and forth amongst the various conference rooms up until about 6:30. We have a deal, and there is a deal in place. We will not be party to that deal. And let me just read to you exactly how the language reads on this mediation. The town of Guilford is made an intended third-party beneficiary of the settlement agreement with full rights to enforce any part thereof. We will not be a signatory on this document. It is the agreement is among the 5 providers or vendors or contractors. At this point, Guilford will not be expending anything further other than some additional expenses with Castle Booze. For those that are familiar with mediation, you forego the right to ask for legal fees and or professional consulting services as part of the mediation agreement. There's some likelihood that we wouldn't even get those legal fees and professional services fees if we were to have been successful in a lawsuit. So at some point, I will be able to share more details with you in an executive session. But it is anticipated that they will begin deconstructing the turf as soon as the 5 parties get their signatures on the document. The anticipation that the field will be up and operational sometime late spring, early summer. So there is a resolution, and it's a positive one.
Do we know what to do the next time to keep
Yes.
this from happening again?
Yes, there is an agreement.
That's a good question. Take it a little further. Will we have any kind of maybe inspection process that's a little more rigid this time when they make repairs to make sure they're made correctly?
That wasn't the contention.
Yep.
on the suit, and I can't comment any further on that.
Yeah, and not being there, I think I can. I don't. Think
You understand that there are professional reputations at stake here,
Right.
Right. And that is why this agreement will wind up being a confidential agreement
Right.
and held by those 5 parties.
But the good thing is that it's been mediated to a positive resolution, and the timeline is actually better because the last conversation that we had, we were looking at not even be able to get that field back till next fall, and now you've just said possibly late spring or summer. So it's sooner as opposed to.
And these contractors will be motivated to get this done.
Yeah, I think the mediation actually being successful was not necessarily completely expected. it was hopeful,
Right.
but not expected. And now that that happened, that turns out better for everybody. Okay. All right.
Any updates on Simon the dog?
Well, actually,
I don't mean
actually,
Sure,
well,
Yes,
if I could just, it was mentioned. It was mentioned last meeting, and I believe when I was reading the minutes, there was a. I guess when Sheila was here, there was a request for what we had spent up to date, and she said she would provide that. It was in the meeting minutes about just about what we had spent. I think for legal.
It's in the $35,000 range at this point. It's probably gone up since since that number was published. There is no resolution at this point. We had been invited to a mediation session by the Department of Agriculture. And that mediation session called for confidentiality. There was a gag order effectively placed on that. The other party to this dispute immediately violated that gag order. We showed up for the meeting. They did not. So we are now back to where we were, which was a suspension or a continuation of the hearing process that had started in September and did not conclude in that one day that that they met. And we're waiting on the Department of Agriculture to reschedule the hearing. So.
Anything else under old business? Okay. Item number 10, new business. I did just want to mention, I think we mentioned it last meeting, but regardless, we had our Board of Education, Board of Finance joint budget meeting this evening, right before our meeting tonight. I could certainly entertain any thoughts on that, but I think one of the, I guess, overall, one of the overviews that I heard was that there are no major initiatives that the Board of Education is really taking on, but there are a number of cost factors that will possibly become issues, including third year of the teacher's contract. I know that there's, we've been hearing over and over again about issues with tuition that may need to be addressed. So we will not be getting those budget books until right after the first of the year. Usually it's, I can almost set my clock to it, it's usually like the 7th or 8th we usually get them, or I'm looking at Linda, 4th, right after the first of the year. But the superintendent and district leadership, they're very close to presenting that or providing that to the Board of Education. So we get the books just when everybody else does. So we did have a very good meeting. It was an hour meeting, and I think every single member of the Board of Education was there. We were all there, so it's fruitful. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts regarding that. And then we do have another joint meeting prior to our next regular meeting on the 22nd. That one will be at 6 o'clock. And it was alluded to before that there's public budget hearings on the Monday and Tuesday after that. So I guess if the 22nd is Tuesday, that would be the 28th and 29th, as Michael so eloquently said before. So the discussions continue on that. And then we have the board. Seriously. How's your ears? Good? We're good now. I was leaning a little forward there. The Board of Selectmen budget workshops, which are the Wednesday and Thursday prior to our next meeting, which we'll be able to report on that at our next meeting. Anything else under new business? Public forum?
I think I have one new business item.
New business item. Okay. We can go back.
Happy holidays
Oh,
to everyone on this board. Everyone watching.
I always go to finish the agenda and I'm like, okay, and then I'll wish it, and someone beats me to it. So would you like to wish everybody? That's fine. We can, I'll share that.
Merry Christmas.
Yes. For everyone who celebrated Hanukkah, hope you had a very nice Hanukkah. And for those who are celebrating Christmas, Merry Christmas. And, of course, to everybody, Happy New Year. And we'll be back on the 22nd of January. So, happy holidays.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.